Hey, welcome to our show. Today we're at Levitt Racing Components here in Mooresville, North Carolina. What they do here? Well, they build racing components. Just like this. This is a hubcap that goes on a real race car. This is a center link that goes on a real race car, just like in the Nationwide Series or the Cup Series. They build a lot of really cool racing components here. In addition to that, they build racing chassis. This is a 1941 Ford. Steve Levitt Sr. and Steve Levitt Jr., the owners of the business, have built this car as a tribute to their grandfather and father, Gardner Levitt. He drove a car just like this in the 1960s. That's the way they were built back in the day. Now we're going to show you how they're built now. What they have here at Levitt is a full-blown chassis build shop. We're going to take you back there and show you how they build a chassis, what components go into it, and we're actually going to focus on one chassis that we're going to be building that will be on the Cup Series tour for television. Stay with us and you'll see exactly what goes into building a real race car right here on our show, How to Build a Race Car. Here we are in the chassis department of Levitt Racing Components. What they're doing back here is exactly that. They're building chassis for real race cars. This is where it all starts. This is a chassis for a late model asphalt car, for example, and there's other chassis we're going to look at, including chassis for the Nationwide Series, ARCA Series, Hooter Series, and, of course, the Sprint Cup Series, the car tomorrow. Well, as you know, or may not know, the past few years, NASCAR Cup Series has been racing one style of car. That car last year was phased out during a series of races that the car of tomorrow, that is now the car today, raced in several of those races last year. Now it'll be racing full time in the Cup Series, starting in Daytona, California, Las Vegas, and so on. What we're going to do later in our show, we're going to show you a COT chassis, car tomorrow chassis, started from scratch, rolling, and then we're going to take it over to our shop and build it out so it's a complete working racing chassis. We're going to use that chassis on television. And what we're doing is we're building this chassis for the Fox broadcast, and they'll be using the chassis during the broadcast of the Cup shows. This chassis is being built for the ARCA Series. It's the same type of chassis that previously was used in the Cup Series. The Nationwide Series, formerly the Busch Series, used a chassis that was 105 inches. The Cup Series previously used a chassis that was 110-inch wheelbase. This is a 110-inch wheelbase chassis, so it can be used in the ARCA Series. What the guys are doing is they're taking steel pipe just like this, bending it, and then welding it in to complete this chassis. That's what you start with. Then you build out the interior and the upper halo, the greenhouse, everything it takes to start putting the rest of the components, like a lot that are made here at Levitt, onto this chassis. So you end up with a finished race car. This chassis being built is a Hooters Series chassis. It's basically the same chassis they use in the Nationwide Series, formerly the Sprint Series. It's a 105-inch wheelbase. Some differences would be back in the fuel cell, and also this car in the Hooter Series is required to have a bumper bar. Andrew back here with Levitt, he's going to show us that bumper bar and show us where it goes. The bumper bar is going to go right down on this area right here. And what's that going to be used for? It's going to be when they're going to be bumping the back of that car. All right? So this is just one more chassis being built here at Levitt's. And soon we're going to show you the car tomorrow chassis. You can see here that this pipe is just welded together. You actually build these cars by hand, basically using straight edge and tape. That's it. This part of the chassis is a track bar assembly. That's what the teams will use to tighten and loosen the car. You can see they've installed this, welded it in right up under the rear wheel well on the chassis. Even got the company name cut into it, Levitt. Another part of the chassis that has to be installed is the interior. This is the floor pan being put in. It's all welded in, and that will complete this chassis. Now we're at the front end of this chassis. We're going to show you a little bit about what goes on up there here at Levitt. This is the control arm mount. Ryan Bell's with us, and Ryan helps us here at How to Build a Race Car. Ryan, tell us a little bit about these control arms and what they do.
Well, this would be your upper control arm. Your upper control arm mounts here. You then take your lower control arm that'll mount up in here. You then place your ball joint, your lower ball joint here, and your upper ball joint in here. And when that's all connected with the spindle on, you have the front suspension to your race car. You can then place a spring in the bucket to make your adjustments to make your race car handle at whatever track you're at.
That's how you build a race car. We're going to talk about some of the front end components now. They start out with a CAD drawing, and they build these things out of steel here at Levitt. Ryan's going to tell us a little bit more about these parts. Ryan?
Well, Lee, we're back with our upper and lower control arm assemblies and our spindle. Now, one thing that's real important to setting up a race car are your slugs. And the way a slug works is you've got your hole drilled in different parts of the slug. The slug then fits here in the control arm, changing where your bolt is located on the mount, and is very key to the setup of the race car. You then take your final project, mount your spindle and hub assembly up, and that is the front end of your everyday race car.
Another very important component of a race car is a truck arm. They build truck arms here too at Levitt Racing Components. Ryan, tell us a little bit about a truck arm.
Well, Lee, the truck arm is basically the rear suspension of the race car. It mounts here about halfway up the chassis. A U-bolt mounts here, holding the rear end in. The spring bucket will sit here, holding in your spring, and that basically completes the rear suspension of your everyday race car.
That's a truck arm. You know, when you're watching a race on television or live in person, you're always hearing about the race teams making adjustments on the race car to make it go faster or corner better. They make front end adjustments, they make suspension adjustments, and they make adjustments to the track bar. This is a track bar. Ryan, tell us a little bit about a track bar and what it takes to adjust it.
Well, Lee, this is your standard track bar minus the two Heim joints on the end for mounting. These other two components are very key in mounting the track bar also, but this one is especially important. Now, the track bar is adjusted by sticking the wrench in the back window, turning the track bar up or down. What that does is loosen or tighten the car for the driver's comfort, making him go fast over 500 miles.
That's what a track bar does. Now you see a lot of the components that go into a race car and a race car chassis. Now you're beginning to get an understanding of how these components are built and what they do. What we're going to show you now are the machines that actually make these components here at Levitt Racing Components.